Welcome back to Views from the Gravelot. This is a new episode. We're kind of doing a little bit different today as we kind of look at the NFL head coaching hires that just kind of break away with some of the Bills stuff lately and kind of talk about something different as we kind of go over these head coaching hires and we'll give our grades. We're going to kind of do a tier list and do the best we can to kind of come with some sort of agreement here because I know we'll disagree on some things. But Mike, we're going to start with Ben Johnson. I want you to take the lead here because this was probably the most hyped up head coaching hire maybe of the last decade. I know you weren't like a super Ben Johnson fan, which I get. I do think there is a bit of him being overrated just because the name at this point. But where did you kind of stand and where do you put him on this list for you?
I would put Ben Johnson in the A tier. I think,
Okay.
I think he's going to be a good coach. I think he's going to be a solid hire. They're just paying him a lot of money, and there's just such high expectations with so many question marks around the Bears that it's going to be very hard for him to reach those. And I'm not too sure I'm 100% confident that right off the bat he will. I mean, if they have patience with him, I think that he should be a good hire and he should be a good coach. But I just haven't seen him as a leader yet of a team.
As far as the patient goes, I feel like that's completely contingent on how Caleb plays. Because if Caleb just underperforms, the fan base is going to be out on him. You just know, like, it's an impatient fan base. They've been starved for years. And I just feel like that kind of ties into a lot of decision making. Like, if the fan base isn't happy, like, they wanted Eberflus gone for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, like, even they didn't even want him going into the year. So it just feels like,
hunts with head coaches for so long now. Like, it's just, I mean, I don't know. They have to give him time in order to see if this is truly successful. And I think they will. I mean, they're paying him what, $13 million a year?
They're paying him $13 million, which I want to say is like top 5. Like, money. It's crazy.
I mean, that's so much money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. What I had written down was I had a couple notes because I did like some of the things I did like with the staff hires. I like that Dennis Allen hire because that kind of, I feel like that falls in the line of thinking of what the Chiefs did with Spagnuolo. It's like, okay, here's a failed former head coach who's a good defensive mind, probably a great one.
Very good.
And he's never going to get hired by another team. And now we have a really good defensive mind on a staff with a really good offensive mind. So there's some, there's definitely some improvement now, like on both sides of the ball. Both sides of the ball are probably going to get better. And his style of defense
is always stout.
Yeah, and his style of defense really benefits like cornerbacks, and they have great cornerbacks in Chicago. Jalen Johnson. It's a good start for as far as the staff hires goes, and I just liked that part of it. And like I said, I was shocked that they landed this hire because he was the most sought after guy, and I know money is really everything when it comes to this type of stuff, but I mean, that's what it is, though. Like, it's Chicago. It's not a super desirable place right now because of the success they've had and the ownership problems they've had. But, it was a good hire. I would put it in S tier, but you said A tier, and I'm willing to go to A tier. So I think we can do A tier. So I'm going to put him right in A for us.
People are going to be like, that's the only guy you should put in S tier. But
it's just, we have to not go too crazy with it.
I have to see him more situationally as like the leader of a
team. Exactly.
Because
remember, it's the Bears. They have not done much winning. That culture is just not great.
And Dan Campbell can mask a lot of cultural
he can
lacking.
I also I was gonna say that about Aaron Glenn, which we'll get into a bit later. Like, that team plays higher than better than they're supposed to because of the mentality he gives them. Like, they play with a chip on their shoulder because of Dan Campbell. Is that because of Ben Johnson? Probably not. So how much of that is he going to bring to the Bears? And like, that's where I think my only question mark is like, are you a leader of men? Are you going to be able to instill a good culture in Chicago, which has been desperately lacking for a long time? Let's go to Brian Schottenheimer now, because you briefly told me before this started that you were actually in the minority on this, where you were like, okay, I'm not entirely out on this. So where do you stand on Brian Schottenheimer?
So I was looking back at Schottenheimer's resume before this, and it's surprisingly very impressive. I mean, he's been the quarterbacks coach he was the quarterbacks coach for the San Diego Chargers, Washington, the Jets, the St. Louis Rams. He was the OC for Georgia in 2015. What really stuck out to me was he was the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks from 2018 to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And those 3 years, I don't know if you've seen, they were the 3 best statistical years of Russell Wilson's entire career. And I just think going forward, they gave Dak all of that money. They clearly wanted to keep some familiarity around by hiring him, especially with that offense. I'm curious to see, with giving him fully the reins, what that offense looks like this year and who they add. I mean, they already have CeeDee Lamb.
Feels like Diggs is inevitable. Feels like that's going to happen.
Low-key, Jake Ferguson is a solid tight end, and if they can just go out and get Genty,
yeah,
this
that's a good
offense could
start.
look really, really good.
One thing they did do, Mike, is it's something that I've been seeing around. It's been sort of a league trend where teams will hire offensive line coaches as their offensive coordinators because they just know, okay, we're never going to lose this guy. Our offensive line will get better. Will get way better. And that's what they did. They hired the Cardinals offensive line coach as their offensive coordinator. And this was what kind of made me not entirely hate this because some of the hires they made, like I said with the Bears, were smart and it had good process. This guy with the Cardinals, Clayton Adams, they didn't have a ton of talent on their offensive line. They signed a practice squad player off the Browns, Yelda Froholt, who turned into a Pro Bowl caliber center. They are able to develop talent, and he's shown, that he's capable of doing that. And the Cowboys have major building blocks on the offensive line. Tyler Guyton was a first-round pick. They have other pieces, obviously, that I'm not naming.
They always have solid players on that front line.
Every good offense, or at least if you're going to be competent in the NFL, has a good offensive line. And I feel like that's a good starting point for them if you're going to look at some positives for this hire. They also hired Bad Eberflus as their DC, which isn't terrible either. As far you think back to his days with the Colts, he had some success there. I don't think he was ever cut out to be a head coach, but that made sense too for me.
Mm-hmm. They hired some experience. I think they're putting the right guys around him, and I think this isn't going to be a year where Dallas is going to go out there and just shock people and be a top seed in the NFC. But I think they're doing the right things. Yes, was this a very lackluster hire? Yes. But do I think it's a bad hire? Maybe not.
Yeah. I would say we haven't focused too much on the negatives, but it just felt like a Jerry Jones hire. And it was a yes man for Jerry, which is we get that. And that's it's Jerry's show. He's pulling all the strings as he always has. But it just has too much influence on this team, and that's what scares me if I was a Cowboys fan.
Got a lot of influence on the league though. That's the problem.
He does. He does for sure. But I'm saying in terms of football operations and making key decisions for this roster, this is a good front office, but I feel like he's handicapping it with the decisions he's making. Yes, very true.
So
Terry Pagula.
He's going to be around till he either passes the team to a family member or, kicks the can. There, unfortunately for that fan base, there's going to be a yes man in there no matter what. Or I know you mentioned before, Bill Belichick maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that would be cool, but that was probably the biggest thing for me with the Cowboys. It's the Dallas Cowboys. They have the brand. They have the pull to get any coach they want. And the fact that they settled on Brian Schottenheimer, who was not a head coach candidate anywhere else, is the biggest frustrating part, I think, as a Cowboys fan, if you're a Cowboys fan. So, hey, it's like I said, I don't think it's entirely terrible, but it doesn't inspire any confidence. I want to go D. Where do you stand? You want to go C?
I would agree with you. I'll put it you like this because we literally can't do it. I would say at best it's a C- higher. At worst, it's a D+.
So let's just go top of D.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Next up is an interesting one. It's Kellen Moore of the Saints because, oh boy, this was the least
journey.
It was a wild ride for Kellen Moore because former stud at Boise State, many people can remember.
Stallion.
He was a beast. Which is funny. I don't know if you saw the clips and stuff.
Crazy stats.
He literally played Derek Carr in college, who is his quarterback now, and he beat him 56-7 for now. Because if they stick with Derek Carr, my grade will change entirely. This is by far the worst head coaching job in the league, and I'm shocked they even got Kellen Moore as it is because it was not desirable. Negative 50 million in cap space, I think. They got no quarterback. They're devoid of talent. This is bad. This is really bad. And if he's able to get 7, 8 wins out of this roster next year, I
That's
think that buys him.
fantastic.
That buys him at least 2, 3 more years at the very
I'd say
least.
two.
Because
I'd say two. Three's a lot in the NFL.
it is, but I mean, like you got to think about it. This team has nothing going for it right now. Like they just extended a 30-year-old Alvin Kamara. Can you name the 5 best players on the Saints right now? My answer to that is no, because they just don't have any talent.
Yeah, I could name some, but probably not.
But like the guys you will name are like 35 years old. Like
Sure.
Tyrann Mathieu, 34. Demario Davis, 34. Like there is
They
no
do have a
confidence
solid
for me.
O-line, though, if I'm not mistaken.
They have some building blocks. Fuaga had a nice year, the rookie they drafted.
They still have
Eric
Ramczyk.
McCoy. It's a lot of injury prone though. Like I don't know.
Would you
To me,
go as far as to say that the Saints are the worst head coaching job in the NFL? Like, if all 32 spots were open, would they be the worst place?
I would just considering the cap situation you have to navigate. Mickey Loomis has not done a good job as their GM probably for like 5 years now. Since Drew Brees has left, like that team has just gotten significantly worse year by year. They're not entirely horrible at drafting, but like
They're not willing to fully tear it down though either.
They got to be willing to though. Eventually, at some point, you got to just say, "Hey, we got to hit the reset button here and seriously compete." Because I feel like in the NFC South, there's no clear cut like the top dog. I mean, yes, the Bucs have won it, but
one
like
draft pick. All it takes
honestly,
is that one
if you get a good quarterback, you're pretty much going to be set up there. That's why I feel like the Falcons and the Panthers have got a good shot at really doing something there because there's just no clear-cut team that's like, okay.
Very random. But if you look back at when the Texans traded Deshaun Watson, yes, I know, shitty human, but he was at the time one of the best quarterbacks in the game.
Yeah.
And that franchise seemed like it had no direction. They had, and I mean, they also were a horrible situation. They hire a very unexperienced, head coach, but a great leader as a player and seemingly as a coach, someone who knows how to implement the right culture. And they go out and they hit on CJ Stroud. And now look, they've made the playoffs the last 2 years. That franchise seems to be going, in comparison, in the right direction. It's all it takes is just you get the quarterback. It really does not matter. Look at Washington. Yeah. Washington's been in shambles for as long as we can remember, since RG3, and they have Jaden Daniels, and now they have one of the brightest futures in the entire league. So
yeah,
really
I mean the thing with I like the Texans comparison, but the Texans were committed to tearing it down. Like they literally, that roster was bare bones. There was nothing except maybe Laramie Tunsil. Like there was nothing to feel good there about. True. Like they let a lot of their stars walk. Justin Reed they let go. They just tore that thing down.
I don't understand why they paid Kamara. I mean, I get it. I don't know either. But like,
I don't either.
I can't tell you. It's kind of time to let it go. And I don't know why Kamara stayed. I mean, does he not think he could have gotten money elsewhere?
If I'm Kamara, I'm going to try to win. Like you saw what Jacobs did. He left Las Vegas, went to the Green Bay Packers, and while they're not perfect, I mean, at least he's got a chance, and it just does. It feels like he's just punting on that opportunity, and maybe he just wants to be loyal, which I respect. But
respect taking the bag.
I respect that. But
take the bag. But
I respect players trying to make their money, but at the same time, like career-wise, it just didn't make a ton of sense to me. I'm gonna go see just for the fact that like the Super Bowl winning head coach, offensive coordinator, they still landed him. It's a terrible situation for him. Any coach really in this situation set up to fail, but I don't think they did terrible as far as like a hire goes. They could have done a lot worse considering the situation. I'm gonna give it a C. I don't know. Do you kind of agree with that, or?
I'd put it in the C tier, but I if you would have told me, you know what, I'm gonna put this in the D tier just because I don't think this.
I'm not gonna argue too much with that.
Then like I would have agreed because I do not think I would be very surprised if he was able to make lemonade out of these lemons that he's been given because it is truly just terrible.
It's hard.
I feel really terrible for the guy because he's been on 3 teams over the last 4 years.
Chargers, Eagles, Cowboys. He's bounced around.
And he's been relatively successful at all 3 of his stops. I mean, well, especially the Eagles, but he's never been like a problem. And it's good that he's getting the opportunity to at least show what he can do, but let's just hope he gets materials to show what he can do.
Yeah, they really need to construct that. I think the at the very least you got to start with moving out from Derek Carr. You got to find the right fit there. Whether it's like a bridge quarterback to just help patch it up for a year, which it feels like they've been doing for like 7 years now.
Since Breeze
Yeah, there needs to be a real like a sign of like, hey, we're trying to build something here. There needs to be a clear direction and
Derek
path.
Carr cannot be in that direction or put him in the F tier because they're done.
Yeah, and it seems like they're giving him influence to make like build his staff out, which is a good sign. It shows that they're willing to trust him, and let's see what his vision is. And
you got to think he wouldn't have agreed to go there if they weren't going to give him free.
No,
because if not, what was the point? Just stay on the Eagles. You already wanted. You're in a great scenario. They wanted to keep you. There'd be no point in taking that job if they didn't give him that.
They're trying to get Eagle staffers over there, which is great because that's the model organization you want. If you're picking off their staff, you can't really get much better than that.
Especially front office wise, pick as many as those guys off as you can.
Yeah, that as far as like I said, like I can't give it a D just for the fact that like, hey, comes from a great organization, had success elsewhere. Like you could have done a lot worse. So I'll give it a C. I want to move forward now to the AFC East. We'll kind of cover the Patriots and Jets. I want to start with the Jets and Aaron Glenn because I was like really torn on this until I really like did some deep thinking about this because it was an interesting hire. I don't think he's the best defensive mind in the world, but I do think he is what the Jets needed.
He's a great motivator and leader of men.
Great motivator. Former Jet himself, former defensive back. And to me, like he's shown like he's capable of elevating, low end talent. Like this Lions team was just decimated with injuries on defense. Absolutely. It was terrible. And you think in the Week 18 game, must-win game, gotta have it for the 1 seed. That defense balled out, and they had some backup players playing out of their minds. Like to me, that's good coaching. Like that shows that hey, there's a coach here that these players are going to play hard for. And how much of that is Dan Campbell? How much is that Aaron Glenn? I don't have the answer to that, but I think this is what New York needed. They needed somebody to instill a culture. And for me, the first green flag for me was they're not going to lay over for Aaron Rodgers. And they basically said, hey, you're not willing to, adapt to our culture and adhere to our standards. Like you're gone. And not even a week after he was hired, he's off.
That transaction single-handedly took their franchise back at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Horrible move.
It's not the NBA. It's that to me, Aaron Rodgers wanted to do like what a lot of superstars in the NBA do: go get their buddies, go team up, and try to build a super team. And they tried all those moves. They brought in Devontae Adams
what that
this
first
season.
year would have been, unfortunately, but that second year, like he statistically didn't have a bad year.
No, he didn't.
That just stunk of toxicity from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for any team that wants to sign Aaron Rodgers, you got to have a really good culture in place. I think Pittsburgh probably at the top of my list.
Did you see the Colin Cowherd segment with Matthew Stafford?
I didn't. No.
So the Rams they're looking to flip Matthew Stafford to the Giants. They want the number 3 overall pick.
That's too much.
I agree. I think that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. If you're the Giants, I mean, I get it. Schoen's trying to keep his job. Dable's trying to keep his job. But, late 30s Matthew Stafford with, fractions of an elbow remaining on his arm, 3rd overall pick. You're so foolish if you do that. And
it feels like the same thing.
What about Rodgers to LA? Draft your quarterback with that 3rd pick, or they're thinking about trading back and getting more picks if they secure that pick.
Rodgers
draft your quarterback and have him be your bridge guy for a year or two.
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't think that's something McVay would do. I don't think they would move on from Stafford. Like to me, that's a lateral move. Like I don't think the Giants are trading that pick for Stafford. I don't think that's in the realm of possibility.
Rodgers right now.
He does. And Stafford is a better fit for that offense. He knows the timing. It's a very timing-based offense. It's a very complex offense that McVay runs.
But to be honest with you, I think McVay can make anyone look good.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. But yeah. I mean, back to the Jets though. Like I like this hire a lot. I mean, like the offensive hire they made too with Tanner Enstrad he was the favorite to replace Ben Johnson in Detroit as their offensive coordinator. He was the passing game coordinator for Detroit. He was essentially his number 2 man. That's a great hire by all means. Like, you got a young guy. You're improving offensive competency because God knows Nathaniel Hackett was not it in Denver or
Oh, and
anywhere
he's
else.
not
As a
it
Bills
anywhere.
fan,
You should
I
never be a coach ever
could
again.
not stand that
With
guy.
the
As
OC.
It was bad. It was bad. Quarterback coach, sure, let him be like a positional coach, but he is
Yes.
not fit to be a play caller.
No.
And it was another Rodgers guy. Like, that's just the only reason he was there. And look, this like, does he have my only question mark for Aaron Glenn is, does he have every coverage in his bag? Is he a super elite defensive mind? I can't answer that. Like, I don't know. He struggles to adapt his own. We saw it in the Bills game. Bills dropped 48 points when they tried to adapt and stop out for the run. Josh Allen went nuclear in that game. They were hurt, yeah, but my biggest question is, like, hey, are you going to be able to adapt throughout as a coach? And, like, if I'm going to hire a defensive head coach, I want him to be the complete package. As somebody that my favorite team has Sean McDermott, he's not the total package, and it screws us over so many times.
Here's what I don't understand is you don't know if Aaron Glenn is that elite defensive mind.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Robert Saleh is pretty close. And we've seen how that worked out. And I don't know how much of that is on the fact that the front office was doing everything Rodgers wanted to do, and they went off that path that was leading them seemingly to success the previous 2 years before they got him. If the front office can get back to doing what they were doing pre-Rodgers, I think this is a successful hire, and I think they'll be a successful team.
Mm-hmm.
But if they just kind of run it back with how they've been operating for the last 2 years, I don't see this. I see this as a very lateral move.
Yeah, I agree with you there, because Woody Johnson, again, he's another one of those owners that like to meddle a lot, and Jets fans will be the first to tell you that. I like it. I mean, I get the lateral move there, because it's like, hey, are you gonna really elevate the talent of this defense? The thing I had thought about. What did you say?
I want to give it a B.
Yeah, that's what I gave it too. I'll give it a B. The one thing I do like is he is a former player. Like, he's going to relate a lot to a lot of these players, especially like a guy like Sauce Gardner. Like, he'll buy in immediately. He's a former DB. They'll get along great. That's important. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a wait and see with him, because are you going to improve the culture? And that's really what I feel like was the majority of the reason why he was hired. It's like, fix this culture, bring a winning attitude back to New York, because when you think the Saleh in the first 2 years even of his tenure there, like, they were enjoying playing football. They were playing, free. They were playing good football, and he developed a lot of star players. And Aaron Glenn did the same thing in Detroit. Aleem McNeil, Brian Branch, Aiden Hutchinson. So, yeah, it feels there's a lot of similarities there. So I wouldn't give it an A, but B is good. I like B.
I think that's fair.
We'll stay in the AFC East. I want to go to Mike Vrabel now, because a lot of people love this hire, including myself. Where do you stand on Vrabel as far as it goes?
I'm starting to come around to it. I feel like just because I hated the Titans so much, I think I just grew a little bit of a bias towards Mike Vrabel as a coach.
Yeah.
And when you really boil it down, I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I think he's going to be a perfect fit for the organization and moving forward. I'm going to be jumping the gun a little bit in the segment here, but I think that's going to be the first and only coach we put in S tier.
Yeah. I put an S too as well.
Yeah, because I think you know what you're getting from him. You know what he is, and it's you seemingly have the quarterback. You just need to get him some help. You need to get him an O-line, get him a weapon, maybe 2, and just see what you got. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't have Drake May behind that offensive line again. That needs to be priority number 1 for that team, is just protecting him and then just getting him a body to throw the ball to that's somewhat competent. Because I think May has all of the tools and the talent in the world to be a franchise quarterback, and I think he will be, and I think this is the right hire in order to do that.
Yeah. I also think they're probably not firing Gerard Mayo if he's not on the market. Right. Because it just seemed like they hired him so fast. He was handpicked. They did the Rooney Rule. Like, they interviewed 2 guys that weren't even qualified. two minority coaches that weren't even qualified to be a head coach, and they just basically went on with it and hired Vrabel immediately. Like, this was their guy from number one. But this is a team that since Belichick has left, and it's only been a year, they just completely got away to what they're great at, and that's the Patriot way. And it definitely faded down the stretch there with Belichick because the Bills came in, got Josh Allen, and they lost Tom Brady.
I feel
But
like once Brady went out, won that Super Bowl, a lot of players in the league were like, you know
yeah,
what? Maybe it wasn't you, dude.
maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
But he is probably the only Belichick coaching hire that's actually truly worked out. And he understands how to win. He understands what it takes to win. I think about this like, this team has gobs of cap space. They have great draft capital. This is the biggest offseason this team has probably had in 25 years. Like,
Really?
in terms of like, you got your quarterback, right? Okay,
I'd say
that's
biggest
important.
season post Brady era.
Yeah, probably. But like,
Go with
you
that
knew
one.
the Patriots were going to be good regardless with Brady. And before Brady, like, they had to make some important decisions. But like, this feels like you have to get talent. You have to. This is a must. Like, we got to build around Drake May. It's a clear path to getting where you want to be. Will you ever be able to dismantle the Bills? I can't answer that
I
because
think
I know how
maybe.
dominant we are.
I think maybe.
It's going
I
to be
think if
very
they build it
difficult.
the
It's
right way, it's
possible.
going to be close.
It's possible, but they got a long way to go. And it starts with making the right financial decisions, and Vrabel's great for that because he has taken some pretty bad rosters. Like, that one seed year where he got the one seed with the Titans. I think he had like 15 players on IR. Tannehill was the quarterback. They won 15 games. Like, the dude knows what it takes to win.
He does.
And to me, it was a joke when he was hired. Like, that ownership were just like, it was completely recency bias. They had a terrible roster, and he didn't even do that terrible with it, and they just let him go. And this was a home run hire for me. I do agree with S tier. Another note, they did hire Josh McDaniels, who is a terrible head coach, right? But I do think he's a great offensive coordinator. Not great,
Nothing
good
makes
offensive
sense to
coordinator.
me. I mean, what is this? Part 3, 4?
Yeah. But it's
You
also
gotta
like,
stop at some
I
point.
believe in him as a offensive coordinator, not as a head coach whatsoever. But that's, again, like, it falls back to what I said earlier. Like, he's never going to get hired away now. Like, and now you have some continuity where, like, Drake May is going to have a guy that's going to be in the building multiple years now.
I
Like,
agree.
because he's not going to get fired. I don't think this team will be bad enough where these coaches are going to get fired this soon. Like, to me, it's good process. Good process.
The only thing I don't like about it is the Patriots just stayed too at home.
Yeah.
It's
They
like
didn't. I didn't like that they didn't do the thorough process and the thorough
yeah.
search. Like, this was like, yes, he was their number one guy, but like, they didn't do the total And like, if I'm gonna ever, like, if I was ever an NFL GM, I'll never be, but like, I would want to talk to every possible candidate. I want to, like, know what's out there. I want to speak to everybody and feel really like 150% sure, like, okay, this is the guy.
I
And
don't
it
think
feels
there's
like they
one
just
team
didn't do
throughout
that.
all of these teams that did that.
I
To
feel
be
like the
honest,
Jets did. I feel like the Jets talked to a lot of guys. I mean, like, a lot of these organizations that are hiring just don't have good ownership, and they don't have good thinking
I mean,
and
I guess
good
if they did, they'd
decision
be
making process.
successful.
Right. They wouldn't be looking for a new head coach. But yeah, I agree. S tier for me, for Bravel. He makes a ton of sense and was probably the number one favorite, but they should be way better next year.
I
I don't
agree.
know how much better. I don't know if they're a playoff team. I can't say that because I haven't seen what they're going to
I
do in the
don't think they'll
offseason.
push for the division, but I think they can push for the playoffs.
Can they sneak in as a 7 seed? They have the quarterback. They got to fix that offensive line, like you said. A lot of fans want to say, like, oh, go get Tet McMillan, go get Abdul Carter, which they need to get better at defense as well. Like, that defense does, outside of Christian Gonzalez, doesn't really have.
But I think that defense also gave up on that team. I
True, very
I
true.
feel like
Very
Mayo
true.
did not motivate that squad. I think they all knew what it was. Like, once you got to a certain level in the season, once you bench Brissett and you put in May, it was like, all right, we're just kind of seeing what we
Yeah, the
have.
fact that they even had Brissett out there as long as they did was like a testament to like what he was doing as a coach. Like,
Putting Brissett out there was terrible. I mean, that's a
to me,
testament to how bad
it was a
that
failure.
was.
It was a failure on his part because you're just like accepting mediocrity and poor. You're just not giving the kid a chance.
I don't think May needed to sit.
That was probably, I would say, top two reasons why he was fired. That and Vrabel being available probably would be my top two.
I agree.
Let's move forward. Go to the Jags and Liam Coen. I've actually grown to like this hire a lot more lately. Where do you kind of see Coen as the Jags coach?
Can I just say that
The Duval clip? I knew you were gonna say that. It was bad.
Like,
that was bad.
If you suck, dude, like you're never living that down. That was like one of the cringiest things. It makes me so uncomfortable thinking about it. I just can't. If I'm a Jaguars fan, I'm like, what the
totally
fuck
embarrassed.
is that? Like,
that was bad.
But on a serious level, like, I think he'll be able to rejuvenize that Jaguars offense. I think they have a surplus of talent. You have your clear-cut wide receiver one in Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's without a shadow of doubt. Christian Kirk was injured. If you can rejuvenate some of that juice with him, I think he's one of the best, slot receivers in the game. And it's really going to be about, can Liam Coen fulfill the potential of Trevor Lawrence? Because if he can do that, then I think that the Jaguars are weird. The Jaguars will either be one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL, or they'll be one of the top 5 teams in the NFL. And that is solely based on Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. So can Liam Coen do what he does and milk as much out of his quarterback as humanly possible? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, if you want to know how I feel about this hire, I think the Jaguars, I don't know what the odds are right now, but winning the AFC South next year, I think I'd put my money on that. Because
I think I would too.
All right, let's think about it from a team's perspective, right? They let go of Trent Baalke, horrible GM. That needed to happen. He's out. Like, anything other than Trent Baalke is an upgrade at this point. You have a superstar pass rusher, Josh Hines Allen, whatever his name is now.
And Trayvon Walker's not a guy.
Very good. Like, probably as good as it gets as far as a number 2 edge rusher goes.
Yes.
Right? So you got that going for you. You got a pass rush.
Yes.
You have, I believe, a franchise quarterback. You have a number 1 wide receiver, right? You have a number 1 corner, Tyson Campbell, who is very underrated in this league. So, like, take all the things I just said, combine it with an offensive-minded head coach, and in a weaker division, it feels like the path is not that hard to being relevant for the Jaguars. I look at what he did with the Bucs. Baker Mayfield threw 40-plus touchdowns this year. And good chunk of that season, no Chris Godwin. I think a lot of people forget that. Like, yes, you have Mike Evans, you have Jalen McMillan, but, like, they got a lot better even without Godwin. Their running game was vastly improved. And that was before
a lot of that's on Bucky Irving, though.
For sure. But it's also good scheme. Good job setting up blocks and giving him opportunities, because you don't see many rookies just hit the ground running, especially as late as Bucky was drafted. I think it was like a 4th round pick or something. Yeah, like that's down to good coaching, good developing. It's a good the Bucs is severely underrated as an organization because they draft well. They sign players. They landed Baker Mayfield after Tom Brady left, which a lot of people thought was a joke, and he ended up turning into a $150 million quarterback. Like, that is what they do. They're a good organization.
I would say Baker's one of the more underrated guys in the league at this point.
Oh, for sure. Especially statistically, I look at some of the numbers, I'm like blown away at some of the seasons he's had. And
he's really come into his own.
What is it, like 8 offensive coordinators now in his entire career, which is insane. Yeah. And he's had back-to-back seasons where, like, any other year where, if Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson aren't playing out of their minds, like, he is probably top 3 in MVP voting.
I just cannot believe that he survived that 1-year stretch where he jumped to, like, what, 3 teams? It
was Carolina.
From the Browns to Carolina.
The Browns to Carolina to Rams. And then back to the Bucs. So that was a crazy sequence for him. But
the fact that he made it out of that and turned into what he is now, I'm like so happy for him, honestly.
Yeah, I am too. You know what's sneaky about Liam Coen that people forgot? He was the Kentucky offensive coordinator, and he actually made Will Levis look pretty good. And that says a lot, because Will Levis has not been a good NFL player. And I know there's a vast
offensive mind alive.
There's a vast difference between the two levels, but still, he made him get drafted in the 2nd round. And I've always loved the McVay hires, the Shanahan system guys, because that has a really good hit rate in the NFL. Think about Mike LaFleur, or like they're Matt LaFleur. I can't remember. I get
I think
mixed up
it's
all the
Matt
time.
LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur, yeah.
Mike
But
McDaniel.
Kevin O'Connell, and they hired Kevin O'Connell's right hand man, Grant Udinsky, who was their assistant and their quarterbacks coach, who I saw Vikings reporters literally like in shambles that this guy was hired away. They were like blown away that they let this guy walk. He's only 29 years old. They hired him as their offensive coordinator. Like people were legitimately upset about that. And then they go out and hire the Packers linebackers coach, Anthony Capinelli, who like you're probably proud of because you're Italian, but the linebackers for the Packers going into the season, everybody viewed as like one of their bigger weaknesses, and that group was great this year. Edgerrin Cooper got better. Quay Walker had the best season he's ever had. They even had backup linebackers Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson play well. Like these coaching hires, I would say out of all the coaches we talked about, as far as staff hires, this was probably the best, I think. And then you combine that with the building blocks they have, like. This was a good hire. I wouldn't go as far as putting it in S tier because again, he's never been a head coach before.
I'd 100% agree. I would say he's A.
I would say he's A as well. I love this hire.
Fit.
Yeah,
I think it's a great organizational fit, and I'd be surprised if it didn't work out.
Yeah, and again, like it's down to Trevor Lawrence. Like he will make or break his head coaching career, but Trevor's only 25 years old.
He's gotten an absolute rough go. You completely sold the bag on his rookie year with Urban Meyer, and Doug Peterson was just not it. And you waited too long.
To me, like Doug Peterson, what he was hired as is what the Raiders did with Carroll. Like bring stability to a really crappy organization and see if you can win some games and so we're not a laughing stock anymore. And at the time, I loved the hire, but like it wore out. It wore thin, and it got to the point where it's like, okay, you're no longer giving us the play calling advantage. You were getting out coached 9 times out of 10, and we need to let you go. And they did. And again, ownership has not been great for this team, but this feels good. If I'm a Jaguars fan, I'm thrilled with the way they did this. And you know the way he left Tampa, a lot of question marks there, but the guy got an NFL head coaching job
several times. By the way,
he has. Yes,
so
he has.
A bit sketchy, but
it is concerning. Hey. It to me, I this was probably my second favorite hire out of all of them. I mean, I'm not gonna put over Ben Johnson just because he hasn't had the track record Ben Johnson has.
The hype,
yeah,
you can't just because of the hype.
All right, last one, Pete Carroll to the Raiders. I had mentioned it multiple times before we even got to him. This is just literally bring stability to a really bad organization that doesn't have a ton of talent, and that's kind of where I stand on it, and I'll get into some other stuff in a little bit. But do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think it's just like bring in a name that's not costing you Gruden money and see what happens.
Yeah.
I love Pete Carroll as a coach, though. I think he is a good head coach. I just don't understand the organizational fit at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I
mean, I do and I don't, for me.
If it works, what is he, 73?
He's 73 years old.
So
he's old as shit.
He is. And it's like, let's say you start hitting the ground running, not this year, but next year. My guy's going to be 75, okay? And then let's say you really take off, right? And you let's say you have 3 years of success after that. Dude's going to be pushing 80. He will not be the head coach of this team in 5. He might not be alive in 5.
That's crazy.
It's real talk.
It's true. It is true.
Dude is one wrong fall away from landing in a nursing home and being cooked. Okay.
Yeah.
Mark Davis is not only the shittiest haircut on earth.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started.
Horrifying owner. First off, why do you do that to yourself?
Yeah,
what is wrong with you? I mean,
do you think it was like a chip bowl or like a soup bowl he puts on top of his head? What do you think the thought process is?
I don't know. What I want to know is I would love to sit down while he's getting it cut and just be like, explain yourself. No, why has no reporter asked him, what is that? What the actual shit is that?
It's crazy.
Because that is not a normal human being. That's psycho.
It's wild.
It's mental issue.
You know what? It seems like it's Tom Brady just calling all the shots for this team, which is insane right now because he's literally commentating in the Super Bowl,
Well, at
and
this
like
point, if you're going to listen to anybody, I guess
it
listen to
is.
him.
I get it. I mean, it's not the worst. It's not the worst idea in the world, but again, like he's got other areas of concern. He's not totally 100% in. Like he's not the general manager. He's not the president even. Like he's got a minority share in ownership, and he feels like okay, we're gonna go hire his buddy from Tampa, have him be the GM. Which again, I don't think it was even a terrible hire, but like okay, this just screams like we're gonna just go after the name. We're gonna try to bring some
The thing is
stability.
they hire horrible front office and coaches,
Horrible.
and they pair that.
Telesco didn't even make it a full year as their GM.
Telesco was
And he
Buffalo made
drafted
it.
Brock Bowers, who which isn't, like I feel like
I
that's
mean,
why a
looking back
year.
on it, but honestly, coming into the draft, people did not give him his flowers. Bowers was one of the best college tight ends to ever grace Earth,
Correct.
and people should have put more respect on his name, including myself. But they pair these horrible hires with some of the worst drafting in NFL history.
Oh my God.
And
Terrible.
like, if you could Pete Carroll could be a perfect fit. That GM could be a perfect fit. If you still draft like shit, it doesn't matter if you go out and get the random Christian Wilkins free agent signing, or just because you have 100 and some million in cap space every few years. That doesn't matter. And like, I think what it boils down to is organizational fit. Pete Carroll is not a fit, and unless they fix the drafting, they're all fired anyway.
Yeah. To me, you know what this feels like is when the Texans went out and hired Lovie Smith or like David Culley. They know this coach isn't going to be here in 2 years. Yep. But hey, just coach us for a year while we kind of transition here. Which like I said, I do and I don't get it because hey, I feel like that's a good idea. You're getting a good coach. He's going to make your team better. He's going to raise the bar. But at the same time, Pete Carroll's 73 years old. You don't think he wants to win?
You know what I think happens?
You know what? No, I was just about to say. You know what I think this ends up happening here? They get themselves – it kicks them right out of quarterback position for the draft. They're not going to be able to draft one.
Completely opposite.
Okay, say what you're going to say.
I was thinking this year they fuck around. They take Shador. They have Pete Carroll run the show for 1 year, and in a year you see
– hire Dion? Oh, my God. I feel like they just would have done that this year because Shador's getting drafted anyways.
Yeah, but you haven't gotten him yet. If you get him, I feel like that's like the most Raiders thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
go out and get like the social media type of hire. You know,
the way we're talking about this, you would think I'm just because of his pedigree, because he's won Super Bowls, he's been to Super Bowls, he was a great college coach. I'm gonna give it a C.
Yeah, I would say the same.
You would think, and again, this like a D or an F.
It's not the worst thing in the world, right? But like this team is this organization is so unserious. You are the Chiefs' bitch right now. Like you have
everybody's bitch right now.
Correct, but like you're in the division with the Chargers, who just made the playoffs. Looks like they're trending upwards. Yep. You got the Broncos, who just made the playoffs. They're trending upwards, and the Chiefs, who are up. The Chiefs, like you have to like, and your roster sucks. Like, bad. Where do you go?
You're 4 years out at best.
You might not start winning in 10 years. Like,
you can hit on the quarterback, and you still have nothing
still could not matter.
Powers to give him. I mean, Jacoby Myers is a solid wide receiver too, but like, there's not. Your running game sucks. Your offensive line sucks. Your defensive line. I mean, yes, you have Christian Wilkins, one of the best defensive.
You got Max Crosby, but does he even want to be there?
Yeah, for now. Your linebacking core, can either of us name a guy of relevance?
Yeah, maybe Robert Spillane, and he's a free agent.
Most people cannot. And the secondary, the secondary's been a question mark since they signed Nnamdi Asomugha, which was in 2013? I mean, it's been horrifying.
They're probably their best corner, Nate Hobbs, who's their nickel corner, is a free agent. And is he want to come back?
Gone. No, he's definitely gone.
The best safety, Trayvon Merritt, free agent. Like, nobody wants to play for the Raiders. They're not going to be able to keep all these guys. They don't have a quarterback. Their offensive line's okay, but like, God.
You know what? I want to go back. I want to look at these Raiders first round picks because
it's a rough list.
Absolutely laughable.
It's bad. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in C just for the sake of visual appeal.
So okay, let's start this in 2018. All right.
Okay.
Colton Miller.
That's good. He's been a good tackle.
I would say. Is he even there anymore?
He is. He's a good tackle. He's a good tackle.
Cleveland Farrell. No. Josh Jacobs, good, but he's gone. Jonathan
Yep.
Abram,
Terrible.
lost.
I don't even
Henry
think he's in the
Ruggs,
league anymore.
Henry Vroom Vroom Ruggs. Well, he's playing with
Prison.
fucking Adam Sandler in The Longest Yard Part 2. Damon Arnett, I'm pretty sure he got cut or he had legal issues or both.
He had, I think he got caught with an illegal gun or something.
Alex Leatherwood, bust.
Out of the
Tyree
league.
Wilson, I'm pretty sure he's okay.
He's been, for where he was picked, not good, but he's getting better.
7th, but they just keep reaching. And Bowers, obviously, you know, it's the best draft pick they've had since Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack, which was 10 years ago. Yeah. But they've since oh my God, where is he? Since 2007, the Jamarcus Russell draft, they've hit on first round pick wise on I'd say 5. Bowers, Josh Jacobs, Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, who they dumped too early, and Darren McFadden.
I would also count Colton Miller. So that's even horrible. If you include him, that's 6. So that's
horrible. That's 20 years. Good. That's 20 years. And you move the team. Like, I just don't think this team's going to be successful until someone else controls that team.
I don't think this team's going to be successful until Patrick Mahomes retires. Like,
you can say that with a lot of teams.
You can, but like at least with the Chargers and the Broncos, like there's some sort of competency there. Raiders haven't proven that in 15 years, if that. Since Gruden, maybe when Gruden was around, like he wasn't terrible, but the GM Mayock was. I don't even know if Gruden had his influence on the picks or not, or what that deal was. But they were drafting and reaching every pick, and everybody knew it.
Carroll at 4 was.
Even Leatherwood was a projected like 3rd round pick. They took in the top 20 picks. Like and Abram was a projected 3rd round pick, took in the top 25 picks. Like, yeah, it was clear and obvious how bad that organization ran, and it's still a problem until they can prove otherwise. So, yeah, I mean I feel good about this list. I mean, do you have any objections to it?
I think
I feel pretty good about it.
The more we talk about it, I guess we give Pete Carroll a D. Are we being
no? I think we're being a little too hard, just because, like you said, the pedigree's there. Like I said, at the very least, he makes the team better. Like they're going to get better. How much better? I don't know.
That?
I think we know that. I think he commands like you know what the Raiders are going to do this offseason, Mike? You know what they're going to do? They're going to go out and they're going to go sign Russell Wilson as their quarterback for a year to be their bridge quarterback, and they're going to sign a bunch of these former Seahawks, and they're going to win 7 games. They're going to pick 11th in the draft next year. They're going to draft a bust, and they're going to be back to where we are right now. That's exactly what's going to happen.
If I'm a Raiders fan,
I wouldn't be able to do it. It's like being a Sabres fan. I just can't do it.
That might be worse. That might actually be worse.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's like the Sabres going out, hiring Phil Housley, then going and acquiring Ryan O'Reilly, and then being like, all right, let's see what we got. Yeah. That's if that actually happens, the people need to riot.
Yeah. I'm telling you, Russell Wilson's going to be a Raider. And you know what's funny? We're going to do an episode on free agency predictions. He's going to be right atop my list going to the Raiders. I'm like fully convinced that's what's going to happen. Because like, who else are they going to get?
I don't think they get. You could see Rodgers going there too.
Could you? I mean, I don't think so. Like, I think Rodgers could continue going to Pittsburgh, but it would be weird. I think
Pittsburgh runs it. I think Pittsburgh runs it with Justin Fields.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think they have the options a lot of people think they do.
No, you're right, but we'll see what happens.
That offensive line's offense is one off season away from just being in shambles.
Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. It was a lot of fun talking about this. I enjoy doing videos like this, and we're probably going to do this more often now that the season's over and we're kind of waiting for the Bills. And really, we won't do a lot of Bills-based content until we get closer to free agency, which is a month away. But
all that. Combine,
draft, and the NFL offseason is so spaced out, it's like hard to just group the content together like that until the season really starts. But we appreciate everybody coming in. If we get new viewers, please check us out. Our links will be in the description below. Mike's Twitter will be in the link there. I'm going to include that. please, please, please leave a like and comment your thoughts as well, and let us know how we did. But yeah, this is our list, and we feel pretty good about it. So everybody, have a good night and take care.